Welcome, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone to the School Turnaround Podcast. My name is Dr. Chance Lewis. I'm so honored for today's episode, honored and excited as well for today's School Turnaround Podcast. As you know, in the School Turnaround Podcast, our whole goal is to utilize this large platform to talk about education and its relationship to schools and making sure all schools are able to reach their full potential, not only to serve the students in their local communities, but also enhance the cities that also support those schools. So over the course of our School Turnaround Podcast, we've had many stakeholders to come, not only educators, whether they be school administrators, teachers, parents, retired personnel as well. But today we have a special guest from my home state of Louisiana. We have our first time, we actually have a sitting mayor with us who's going to join us to talk about school turnaround and the impact that it could have as well. So I'm so honored and delighted to have the mayor of Lake Charles, Louisiana, Mayor Nic Hunter, with us today as well. So, Mayor, thank you for being with us today. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I'm doing great. And let me tell you, I am the one that's honored. I am really appreciative of being invited to visit with you. And I can't wait for the conversation. I'm a big advocate of partnerships between government and school systems. And
Yes.
heard a lot about you. And it's great to see a Louisiana native son doing great things outside the state.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm so appreciative to have you here, especially in a city that I know very well from my early days as a kid to all the great things that are going on there now as well. So if we could jump right in, I know your time is valuable and we really appreciate the time. So for our guest today, if you would mind just telling our listening audience a little bit about your journey to becoming the mayor of Lake Charles. And one thing I was excited to learn about myself that I didn't even know as a native Louisianian was that recently Lake Charles, Louisiana was named one of the South's best cities on the rise as well. Honor that is very, very good for that area. So tell us a little bit about your journey in the city, what's going on there, and how you're utilizing your role as mayor to kind of drive school turnaround in your local community.
Well, I was born and bred here in Lake Charles, never lived anywhere else. Grew up in the
Okay.
restaurant business
Okay.
and still in the restaurant business to a certain extent. I think that's probably where an early appreciation for working with the public and a little bit of public service generated. And I had a great experience K through 12. I actually went to Montessori school
Okay.
for my pre-K and kindergarten years. And as crazy as it sounds, I remember that. And I remember that
Right.
experience being a very positive one for me. And went to a couple years of public school. And my grandmother, Mrs. Hunter, who was really important to me, she's no longer with us anymore, is very
Hmm.
important to me. But she was a real diehard Catholic. And so it
Okay.
was really important for her that I go to Catholic school. And I did that. And I had a great experience in our local Catholic school system here. But I also went to McNeese State University, which is
Hmm.
our local four-year university here. And as I stated, I was in the restaurant business, so I just assumed, well, let me go get a degree in business. That's what
Right.
makes sense. That's what everybody said to go do. And let me tell you, we have a great college of business at McNeese, but I took statistics three times. And
Okay.
on the third time, I said, man, those history electives I'm taking are really inspiring. And I
Right.
really enjoyed getting up and going to class for those history classes. So I switched my
Okay.
major to history. And I would say it was probably within those history classes where I started studying Louisiana political history, where I said to myself, man, if some of these crazy cats who did some of these things in Louisiana's political history
Right.
background can do what they did, I could probably do some decent things as well.
Sure.
And there was probably a point in my mid 20s where I remember starting to get a high from doing good stuff with nonprofits and good stuff for the community. And that sense of fulfillment was greater than the sense of fulfillment or gratification from financial gain or
Sure.
making a lot of money. So my definition of success has changed over the last 30 years. And
Okay.
that's one thing I try to caution young entrepreneurs and high school age young men and women is to be successful does not mean to be financially wealthy.
Sure.
And so for me, I started really getting interested in making a mark on this community that I love. So when I was 27, I ran for what we call a police juror, what you would call a county
Yep.
commissioner. Was
Yep.
elected, and then at 33, I was elected mayor of the city of Lake Charles. Was
Yes.
reelected, and if people think I'm doing a halfway decent job, perhaps I'll be reelected next year. I would be honored to serve another term, and so
Great.
that's the Reader's Digest version of my story.
Well, that's great. That's great. And, I like to hear people's journeys to their respective roles because oftentimes people kind of look at the now and don't look at the journey as well. And it's the same thing that goes on in education all the time as well. But it's great hearing the stories as well. So tell me a little bit that the designation with Lake Charles being one of the Southern's best cities on the rise, tell me a little bit about that to kind of set the context for what we're going to talk about today.
Well, I will tell you why that means so much to this city right now is because in 2020 and 2021, the city of Lake Charles went through a series of federally declared natural disasters. We were all going through COVID, and that was hard on everybody. So, in the middle of COVID, the city of Lake Charles went through a hurricane, which was the fifth strongest hurricane to ever hit mainland United States of America in August of 2020. About
Right.
45 days later, we got hit by a second hurricane.
Yeah.
And then in February of 2021, we got hit with a once in a generation ice storm. And then in May of 2021, we got hit with a 1,000 year rain event. So for a while, the Weather Channel had a headline that we were America's most weather battered city. And there is not another city in American history that has had more federally declared natural disasters over a 1 year span than the city of Lake Charles. So not exactly the kind of tagline that you would lead with if you're
Right.
talking about a city on the rise or something that you're trying to use to promote your community. So those were really rough months and rough subsequent years. But to look at where we are today with the team effort, and I really emphasize the word team because
Sure.
it's not about one person, it's not about one
Right.
agency. It is really about the team effort in this community. I am so proud of the miraculous comeback we have made. And so when Southern Living named us as one of the Southern cities on the rise, man, it was just like a good pat on the back to everybody.
Sure.
And look, we've still got strides to make. There's a lot of people who are still suffering in this community from those natural disasters. But looking at where we are today versus 3.5, 4 years ago, I'm really proud of this community.
Great, great. Well, kudos to you and your team for leading those efforts. And like I say, it's something I definitely follow closely because of my family being there, of course, as well. So we definitely appreciate all what you're doing with that. So when you look at that designation, of course, when you kind of think about city context, a key component of that is the education system and the education of the citizens, in your city as well. So in looking at just to set a context in the work that I do, one of the things we learned that in every state across the country, we have schools that are in need of what we call school turnaround. So each state has its own kind of rating system, whether it's letter grades like here in North Carolina or similar to like Louisiana where schools get letter grades based on performance. And then other states have index scores, how they rate the schools numerically as well. But given that no matter where they are, we find in every state we have about 300 or more schools every year that need, school turnaround. So it's a real issue, everywhere as well. So when we look at your city and some of the initiatives that you've put forward, I've come to learn that some key initiatives that you've had has really been around parks and partnerships, right? And so, talk to us a little bit about how you came to that and the impact you see around parks and the partnerships as having a relationship to the educational experiences of families in your community.
Well, we have tried to break down barriers. We've tried to break down silos. And
Yeah,
what I mean by that is the city of Lake Charles, city government, we don't control the school board's budget. We don't
right,
control the school system. But if you really want to make an impact on your community, it's kind of a cop out to just say, oh, well, we don't control that. Call the school board,
right,
or that's their
right,
problem. Let me tell you, it is all of our problem if we have issues in our school system. And I do not claim to be an expert in education. However, I have seen a lot of benefit from getting groups around the table and being able to put synergy together for different initiatives. Any time that we can find an initiative or a mission that meets multiple agencies' goals, I want those agencies at the table.
sure,
Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I abhor silos. When we're
right,
so focused on our mission that we're not including other agencies or potential partners, our mission is not going to be completed to the fullest extent, to the best it could be. And this is a real simple example, but when we put out a flyer for a park event, when we put out a flyer for some new initiative for the city, I tell my team, if we only have the city's logo on that flyer, I'm
right,
upset. I don't like that. I want to
right,
see the school board's logo. I want to see McNeese State University's logo. I want to see Suella, our local technical school's
yep,
logo on that flyer. I want to see the library system's logo on that flyer. I want to see a Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, which is like the county government's logo
yep,
on that flyer, because at the end of the day, we really are all trying to aim to do the same thing, which is make this community better. And so what the city has, the assets that we have, is a park system and a really abundant amount of public space and green space. And so when I came into office, it needed some love. I mean, our park system needed some love, and I'm not going to try to get off on a bunny trail
right,
here, but I'll just say that rather than pass an additional tax, what we got creative in doing was soliciting private funds and private partners through philanthropy to match city dollars to go make impacts at our parks.
sure,
And our initial goal was $100,000. And we said if we could get 4 companies to do 25 each, we would match it with city money and we'd go make a $50,000 impact at 4 parks. So as I sit here today talking to you, Partners in Parks has meant over $1.7 million of
wow, that's
private
great,
funds into our park system, over 4,000 man hours of volunteer hours into our park systems. And it has been a game changer for the synergy and this community. And a couple solid examples I'll give you is we have a park that's right across from a Head Start school, and we knew that that park needed some love. We chose to focus on more of a native planting and natural habitat. And all of a sudden, we have these kindergarten students from across the street who are coming on a regular basis to our park, learning about native species, learning about pollination. We have McNeese State University's education students and the department head coming to have their students get some hands-on experience dealing with kindergartners. We have
right,
the library there with a table full of books about native species and Louisiana ecology. So that's a small example. Multiply that times 1,000, and that's the kind of stuff we've tried to do as a city.
And that's a great initiative because when we think about the education system, you're correct. In that conversation, most of the time it's the local school board, the local schools, and many times people don't think about the mayor's office as well. But an initiative like enhancing the parks, all of that enhances also the schooling experience, for those students and kind of what we call the outdoor classrooms that educators can utilize as well. So by you having it across the street, that is great as well. So my next question I want to kind of ask you about, because you know the importance of education from a mayor's seat when your education system is good, how that could be attractive for businesses and a number of other stakeholders as well. So since this school turnaround work is normally considered the work of the school district, tell us a little bit about why your administration is working to ensure the city government really looks at those school outcomes at the school district level and becoming a partner, since you're not the primary person that's over the education system, but that you're partners with it, with the education system, because of the bigger picture of what it could do for the city as well, in addition to the local students there.
Well, number one, just as a human being, you should care about the
Yeah,
public education system, whether you're a
of
mayor
course.
or any other occupation. You should care about the quality of the local education system in your community. I care about that. I also have a 7-year-old son who's in the public
Right.
school system, and so I'm invested now. I truly
Of
care,
course.
probably more than I have in the past. Um, but secondly, as a mayor, when you're trying to discuss economic development, when you're trying to pitch your city to business interests, they care about the school system.
Of
And it
course.
is inescapable. These days, when we talk with businesses who are interested in locating in this community, obviously your tax structure matters. I mean, that's,
Of
money
course.
is always going to matter. But let me
Of
tell you what
course.
is a very close second, and sometimes I believe even number one, before any kind of incentives, financial incentives, it's quality of life. And are my
Right.
employees going to want to live in this city? And a huge part of that is, are my employees going to want to raise their children in this
Right.
city?
Right.
So if you have a stellar tax incentive package and you are the master of financial ways to attract a business to your community, but you have a subpar public education system, you are going uphill. That's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
I
Right.
have been blessed, and I believe we are blessed locally in that we have a good public school system. We have a stellar administration, and we
Yep.
have a good school board who I think gets it. And we've created those partnerships over years. But it matters. And when we're talking with site selection individuals or CEOs, they care about quality of life. They care about your public school system.
Right, right, and that's important. And many people don't realize that how integral the education system is in the bigger picture of enhancing a city and bringing new businesses and income through taxes and so on and so forth that will benefit the city as well. So I'm sure in your role as mayor, when you've kind of talking to these stakeholders, you had to learn a little bit more about the education system. In when you think about school turnaround, of course, every city has schools that are doing great. Some schools that have challenges. So from your seat as mayor, when you kind of look in at the education system, in your city, and knowing the schools that have challenges and some ways that those things need to be addressed. What have you learned as mayor about the education system and some of the challenges that some of your schools, have, as it relates to school turnaround?
Well, I certainly have learned that there is no mathematical equation for just a
Right.
school turnaround. I don't think that there's any math equation that says A plus B equals C. If you do this, you're guaranteed to turn a school around.
Right.
I also believe strongly that communication and the offering of partnerships is important. I know as mayor, I can't go in and should not, it's not my place to go in and run an elementary school or tell an administrator or a principal what I think they should be doing at a school. What I
Hmm.
can do and what mayors should be doing is when you see an issue or see a problem, reach out and say, how can I help? And
Sure.
sometimes there's an answer to that. Sometimes there's not an answer, an immediate answer to how a city can help. But when we can kind of wrap our arms around a particular school and show some school pride and maybe a little morale boost for a school, that is something that we have done a lot of. And I have regular, at least quarterly, maybe sometimes more, meetings with the superintendent to talk about some of their schools that are struggling, to
Yeah.
hear what in schools are suffering some enrollment challenges, and
Hmm.
what we can do is kind of pay a little extra attention maybe to those areas. And
Right.
maybe there is a park across the street from that school that might benefit from a little additional programming. Maybe there is a park across the street from that school that needs an art in the park event one week where we partner with the school kids. And now all of a sudden a parent says, oh man, did you see what they're doing over at this
Hmm.
school? That's got to be a good place to send your kid if
Yeah.
they're doing these great things with the city.
That's right. That's right.
So again, I don't know if that's a great answer to your question. I don't think that there's an equation for how a mayor can go in and autonomously generate some school turnaround. But I know that we've got to be there. We've got to offer help, and we've got to be there as a resource where we can.
Right, and you just have that listening ear, as a mayor as well. Because in my work across the country, and dealing with different stakeholders, and even when I talk to mayors and kind of help them understand from the educational side, when we partner with these school districts and schools, and if we can enhance a school, so we could move a school that may have a letter grade of D, and we move that school to a B school, it impacts a lot of things, not only the education of the students, it favorably impacts that neighborhood. It increases real estate values. It enhances bigger kind of barometers of the city as well. So just by the sake of partnering and making a schooling experience better where students are performing in that school, so many stakeholders win as a result of that, because schools are kind of the kind of key components of all of these local communities and neighborhoods as well. So I always kind of tell that to mayors and other stakeholders, city councils and school boards, that just changing one school does a lot for a city, as well. So given that, but one of the things I like to do on the podcast is provide solutions, because we have a really big platform and a lot of stakeholders tune in. So I like to talk through solutions. So in our conversation that you and I could have here, Mayor, when you think about from your seat, and we can kind of just look broadly, not only in your city, but when you think about other mayors across the country, who may see this podcast as well. So let's talk about solutions for them. So from your seat, when you think about potential partnerships and solutions around school turnaround, and the way it could not only support the schools but also cities in a larger space. Think about what are some solutions of how mayors and superintendents can work together.
Well, probably the easiest one, and it sounds easy, but it's something that we don't do enough, again, is literally sit down on a regular basis and talk to each other about priorities, about problems,
Hmm.
and kind of lay out some of your capital projects.
Yeah.
Because if the city is doing some things that will be affecting schools, that superintendent needs to know.
Right.
The other thing is be willing, not only with your manpower, but with your budgets to get into partnerships. And I'll give you a solid example that I had a little pushback on, but not too much.
Hmm.
We passed a bond for the city of Lake Charles last
Hmm.
year, and it's the first bond we've had in about 20 years. And
Wow.
I included money for our local school system's regional STEM center. And
Okay.
this is a regional STEM center that services the whole parish, so outside the city of Lake Charles. It's located smack dab in the middle of the city of Lake Charles. But there were a few people that said, why are you taking city bond money and helping the STEM center? I said, guys, when I went to the superintendent with this project, I said, I'll do it, but you guys got to match it dollar for dollar. And
Hmm.
they did that. And so all of a sudden, we're going and making a huge impact into a neighborhood that's a central part of the city and making an impact on something that's going to help the school system, help quality of life, help children. And yeah, some of them are going to be outside the city limits, but at the end of the day,
Right.
who cares? We're helping kids. So,
Right.
so be willing to be creative and think outside the box. Now, when you're dealing with public money, you can't push the envelope too
Right.
far. You got to make
Too
sure you're
far.
doing it
Right.
legal. But be willing to be creative and bold, and have bold discussions. I'm a big boy. I've been told no before, and
Right.
if I go to someone with an idea, a partner agency with an idea, and they say no, I'll lick my wounds. We'll come back again and sit at the table. But don't be afraid to be bold and ask about some of those partnerships.
Great, great. That's a great idea as well. So working with the superintendent. So now let's think about school boards, right? Because of course superintendents work for the school board. So that's kind of that governing, agency around education. So what are some solutions that other mayors can think about of how you could effectively work with a school board?
So I hope I'm not spreading all my secrets here. But
Oh no, that's okay.
one
You're the
one
you're the
thing,
example. You're the example.
yeah. Well, look, one thing I'm cautious about before, and this is by the way not just school boards, but any other agency that
Yeah,
has an elected board. I like to try to be on the same page with the executive director or head of that agency before I start talking to their board. And I think
sure.
sometimes that
That makes
that
sense.
that is something that people will put the cart in front of the horse sometimes, is they'll immediately start going and talking to board members before they go talk to a superintendent.
Right.
And that's, I think it's a respect thing to
Yeah.
try to at least have that first introductory conversation with the superintendent. And even if y'all aren't on the same page 100%, I think it's just a respect thing to say, hey, I want to talk to you about this project initiative. And before I go talk to your board members, I at least want to give you a heads up that I'm going to go
Of
talk
course.
to some of your board members. Um, but I think a lot of elected officials are there's some similar traits. Myself included. I think we've all got a little bit of ego,
Of
and
course. Yeah.
so when you talk with anyone and trying to sell something, make sure you explain to them how it can help their district or the people that they represent.
Hmm.
Not everyone is going to get the big picture. Some people are going to
Right.
be very focused on that fiefdom, and so
Hmm.
I always try to explain the big picture, but also how it can help their constituents as well.
Of course. Of course. That makes a lot of sense. So that's school board. So let's look at city or, like in your case, parish or county government and the leadership there. How can mayors kind of think about school turnaround and the enhancement of what education can do, but working with the government, city government agencies as well?
Well, once again, I hope I'm not just repeating the similar answer, but be bold in your request for partnerships. Don't be afraid to ask just because the answer might be no. And by the way, just as I've been told no, sometimes I've had some requests of the city where I had to
Right.
say that's something we can't do. That's a little outside of our comfort zone. Um,
Right.
but I think that to realize that especially the public school system matters greatly to local city government. Superintendents, school board members should be engaging with mayors, should be engaging with council members, because again, if we're trying to accomplish all of our goals in silos, then we're really not accomplishing things to the best that they can be.
Right. That's true. That's true. And you have a great university right there in your backyard, McNeese State University, as well. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about how you partner with them on different initiatives, making sure that they're at the table. Logos are on, flyers for events as well. So if you were talking to another mayor about how to get their universities involved, what would be a solution or two that you could tell them about engaging the university as well?
So I'm kind of lucky in the fact that we basically have one 4-year university and one 2-year technical school. So I don't really have to worry about the politics of, oh, one
Right.
university is getting more involved than another. For
Yep.
us, it's McNeese or Suella. If there's an outside university from another location and they come to town, as long as we're not cannibalizing against a program McNeese or Suella offers, we'll partner with them too. But
Sure.
I say all that to admit that I know that there's mayors who have to be cautious about the politics of public and private universities in their cities. Um, all that being said, it can be really small things that make an impact. And I'll go back to what I said a moment ago with literally just having some programming for families in your
Yes.
parks. I find that department heads at universities really are yearning for opportunities for their students to interact with the
Right.
community. And
Yes.
so that's what we've done. We found 100 ways for the university to get involved in our park system.
Great, great, and that's great. So, as you look at that, that really kind of looks at the last stakeholder I was thinking about, parents. So through those initiatives, through the parks, maybe that's a key solution where some parents may have never engaged with the mayor's office, but you can find a way through the initiatives that you're doing with the parks to engage parents, in an initiative through the mayor's office, but still benefits their kids. It has an education focus as well. So all of those are just kind of great solutions that I think for any mayor or city official that's looking at it, those things that are under your supervision, like the park system, could be key engagement initiatives that could have parents more involved in their kids' education, particularly as it relates to school turnaround as well. So as we get ready to close out, because I want to value your time as well, when we think about school turnaround and your seat as a mayor, I want to just give you the floor for any last comments when you think about the power of what a mayor's office could do to support school turnaround as well.
I think the biggest responsibility related to that is that the mayor's office should be a conduit for agencies and assets to come together and make a bigger impact than just that one agency working on its own. And again, I apologize if I'm treading over territory we've already been over
Oh no.
before, but I'll go back to calling out some of those agencies. City of Lake Charles, Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, our library system, our public school system, United Way, our community foundation, multiple other nonprofits, faith-based organizations. We get these groups together and we get these groups talking and we find ways that missions align. And especially in this day and age where public budgets are stretched to the max, when you can invite philanthropic partnerships, you're going to not only make those budgets stretch further, but you're going to have investment from the community and a certain ownership of the system with your community. I will go back to the STEM Center I mentioned a moment ago. And I recently hosted a lunch at the STEM Center, and the invitation came from the mayor of Lake Charles.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a couple of people ask, even a couple of school board members ask, why are you hosting an event at the STEM Center? And my
Right.
answer was because there's still some companies in this city that don't know the STEM Center exists.
That's right.
And quite frankly, if the mayor calls and invites someone to a lunch, I'm just being honest, it might have a little more punch
That's
than
right.
just getting an invitation cold to sit down at a lunch. So we had probably 100 people show up at
Oh,
this
nice.
event for the STEM Center, and we opened a lot of eyes that day. And subsequently, the STEM Center has received a couple additional grants from a couple of those companies that were at the lunch. A couple of my
Nice.
staff jokingly said, "Hey, you made us miss out on some grants from these companies that went to the school board instead of our park system." I said, "No,
Right.
that's not a problem, man. That is not a
Right.
problem. If
Right.
they are helping children, if we're helping families, I don't care if the grant goes to the city or the school board. Let's make it
Right.
happen." So I think that being a conduit, bringing people together, sounds like an easy thing, but it also is something that you have to be very intentional about.
Great, great, great. Well, all of those are key solutions that I think, for mayors across the country to consider as well, because like I said, this issue, is in every city across the country as well, particularly as it relates to our education system. So today, I just want to thank you for your time and wisdom and continue to wish you the best of luck and thank you for your great leadership that you're doing in the city of Lake Charles, in my home state of Louisiana there. So I really appreciate your time today. I'm indebted to you for volunteering to be here, just to have a conversation with us as well. So thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thank you for the invite and keep doing the great things that you're doing, Dr. Lewis.
Okay, thank you so much.